Let's get peppy. Welcome to PEP 131. That's PEP or Planet Extra podcast. It's an offshoot of Planet America on the ABC Australia, which you can see on Friday at 8 p.m. on ABC News Channel, iView, on Facebook at ABC Planet America, and on YouTube at the ABC In-Depth channel, or in fact at 8:30 on Wednesday, 9:30 on Wednesday night on ABC One or ABC TV as well. On PEP, we cover all the stuff that's too nerdy for TV. If you're listening, you can also see this podcast on Facebook and YouTube, where there is a blurb with lots of extra information as well. And on those video podcasts, you will see Dr. Pepper himself, Dr. Dave Smith. Hello, Dave.
Good afternoon.
Head off the lawsuits, please.
Yes, I'm an associate professor at the United States Studies Centre at the University of Sydney, but I don't speak for either of those institutions, so neither they nor anybody else should be held responsible for anything that I say. I mean, I should be held responsible for things that I say. This is a new thing that I really want to reintroduce. Yeah. The idea of people being accountable for things that they actually say, except not in the really just scorched earth moronic way that we are seeing at the moment, where people are being held accountable for the worst kind of imputations that anybody can possibly read into things they say, especially when they say it in unguarded moments. So,
are you going to start censuring me, Dave?
I'm not going to start censuring you. No, I am against censorship as a tool.
Okay, fair enough.
Yes.
By the way,
yes,
I saw your digs the other day.
I did
a podcast at the US Studies Centre.
Oh, right.
And it's quite salubrious. It's certainly more salubrious than the ABC.
So it's a really interesting building. So this is the Institute building on City Road. It was originally a home for deaf, dumb and blind children. That's why it's known as the Institute building. So it was built in the late 19th century. That's, the terminology of the time. I think between about 1870 and 1880. And if you look very carefully on the arch over the door, it has a biblical text from Isaiah, which says that their eyes shall be opened and their ears shall be unstopped and their tongues shall be set free. And so this was, it sort of changed roles over the years, but it plays a pretty important role in deaf history in New South Wales. And actually every year the Deaf History Association comes in and does tours of it. So it became this facility for deaf people, and but then I think in the 1950s, the Deaf Society moved its headquarters elsewhere, and nobody else wanted this building, I think, which was in a significant state of disrepair by then, so they gave it to the University of Sydney, and for decades it served as a kind of temporary home for a lot of places. So I know a lot of people who've done exams in that building over the years. The US Studies Centre is really the first kind of permanent tenant of it since its original purpose. It's an extremely eccentric building.
It's clean,
I have to say. Yeah.
It's certainly cleaner than the ABC. And can I just say, it's only because that you told me you were going to hold people to account for their comments.
Right.
That I didn't make a Def Leppard reference once.
Well, that's
story.
Yes. Yeah. Probably the worst thing about working in that building, though, is it is just lightning central.
Really?
Oh, yeah. It's a massive lightning attractor.
It's been struck by lightning how many times?
At some point during the pandemic, I get struck by lightning all the time, but at some point during the pandemic.
Yes.
Yeah, now read into that what you want. But yeah, at some point during the pandemic, we had this electric hand sanitizer dispenser. And during a particularly vicious lightning strike, the electric hand sanitizer went insane and just dispensed hand sanitizer all over the floor.
Well, that is a very short Dave story time. People, the Peppers went crazy for Dave's story time with Dave.
Yeah, I don't think I've got any as good as the one that I told last week.
As good as the madness.
Unfortunately.
That's okay. We'll just settle for the hand dispenser. That's okay.
Yeah.
And for those who who are wondering why we keep on talking about this building that you don't even know, you can just visualize, if you will, given what Dave just told us, the church tower from the town hall from Back to the Future.
Yes, yeah.
That's what it's like.
Big Victorian. To me, that is one of the best pieces of architecture at the University of Sydney.
Oh, honestly, I was quite surprised. I don't know. Don't take it as an insult, but I was expecting it to be a hovel. And I was quite surprised. Going, wow, I should just work here.
Look, okay, I say I don't speak for the US Study Centre, but on behalf of the US Study Centre, I would like to say that building is not a hovel.
No, definitely not.
Yes.
Dave, are you grateful for anything other than the quality of your office?
I was grateful for something. But yes. So we've had a lot of rain in Sydney this week.
Yes.
I'm very grateful for the very cheap umbrella, but very high quality umbrella that I bought at a 7-Eleven in Japan. And I just want to ask, how is it that Japan gets this so right and most other countries get it so wrong? Why is it so easy to buy cheap, high-quality umbrellas as well as a lot of other goods from Japanese 7-Elevens and so hard anywhere else in the world?
These are the umbrellas that go down a lot, aren't they? The ones they're like a bell over your head. Are you talking about those kinds?
They are more bell-shaped, yes.
Yeah, because I've seen a lot of them in Japan. Not that I'm like some regular. But
Yeah. Yes. But how hard this could... Anyway, I'm very grateful for that umbrella, which when I bought it, I named it Tozai because that was the train line that I was catching in Tokyo.
Sure.
Very grateful for Tozai this week, and I just wish I just wish we could do the same thing here.
Well, this week I'm grateful for Kim Reynolds, the governor of Iowa.
Oh, yes.
And the reason why is because we have said a number of times now how pathetic it is, how weakly Republicans capitulate to Trump, even ones who don't like him very much.
Yes.
And we all know what happened this week. Trump asked her for her endorsement in Iowa, and she didn't have to give her endorsement to anyone because the governor from Iowa normally doesn't give out endorsements. But she decided to not just not give it to Trump, but to actively give it to Ron DeSantis.
Yes.
Someone who is dying in the arse right now.
Yes, yeah.
And Kim Reynolds would be aware of that.
Yes.
She would be aware the chances of Trump not being the nominee is probably, well, it's well below single figures.
Yes.
It's probably below.
Yes.
It's probably below 1% at this point in time.
Yes.
And she just went out of her way to piss him off anyway, knowing that he holds a grudge.
Yes.
And knowing that the senator in Iowa is about 180. Like Chuck Grassley is literally 90 years old. So he's not going to be long for the Senate. He's only got at least... Is
he the oldest now?
I think he is.
Yeah.
He's got at most 3 more terms.
Yes. What age was Thurmond when he died?
Strom Thurmond was, I think it was 97, I think, off the top of my head.
No, it was older than that.
Older than that? We'll look it up.
I think it was at least 99.
I'll look it up. But the fact is, Chuck Grassley's not going to be around for a while. He was 101.
Wow.
Well, that's when he died. 101, yeah.
I think he was still in the Senate when he died.
So there you go.
Yeah, there you go. Beat Don Bradman's average.
So now you can bet your life that Trump is not going to let her get that Senate seat.
No.
When it becomes available.
Yes.
Like he's just going to hound her.
Yes,
right?
yeah.
And there's going to be a primary challenge, all the rest of it. So why would she do this?
Because of self-respect.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, some people still actually have it. And isn't it amazing when people exercise it? Yeah. Self-respect.
Good on you, Kim Reynolds.
Yeah.
She has if I was a 1930s film star, I would say she's got moxie.
Yes. Well, there are things more important than political ambition. And second...
She's not old.
Yeah. Second, the number of people during the Trump era who have actually got anywhere out of this excessive flattery to Trump that they wouldn't have got otherwise is actually pretty small.
Yeah, but she could have shut up. She could have shut up. She didn't have to flatter him. She could have just shut up. Yeah. It's the fact that she endorsed Ron DeSantis that's going to make her dead to Trump, right?
Yes,
but she didn't, and I'm so grateful. You're nuts, Kim.
This is the only time I'm ever going to join in congratulations of someone for endorsing Ron DeSantis, which is not usually a move I would associate with self-respect, but in this case it is.
So it's shared gratitude.
Yes.
Okay. I don't want to waste time on the debate. Do you have anything to say about the debate?
No.
No, I mean, like we know, every single debate's the same thing, isn't it?
Yes.
Everyone's a loser, Trump's a winner.
Yeah.
Like he made the right call to not to, as far as winning the nomination goes.
Yes, yeah.
He made the right call to not do the debates.
Yes.
It's pathetic, these debates without him.
Yeah.
And no one can take can land a hit on him. And
by the way, it does look like Vivek has worn thin faster than just about anybody I've ever seen.
Yeah.
In one of these contests.
Yeah.
Over the course of 3 debates, he's gone from like shit, he could actually be challenging for the number 2 spot to everyone's just annoyed with him now, and he's just trying to increase his annoyance factor.
I'll tell you what Vivek has shown, and I say this as someone who every now and then, a few times now, I've said I really like something that Vivek has done.
Yeah.
But I tell you what he has done. He has shown that it's not easy to be Trump.
Yes.
Like people think. I mean, like Trump is not a bright guy, right? But what Trump does, he is good at.
Yes, yeah.
Like it is not actually easy to be charming while being an asshole.
Yes, yeah.
And Vivek is trying to do Trump, and he says things that Trump could say.
Yes, yeah.
But he still comes off as an asshole.
He doesn't have the decades of profile that Trump built.
I don't think it's just profile. I think Trump's got this roguish kind of glint in his eye when he's being an asshole that Vivek just does not have.
It's also, let's say it straight, it's easier for people like it's easier for an old white guy to get away with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's probably fair.
Yeah. To get the kind of benefit of the doubt that Trump gets. Yeah. Yes.
Anyway, since I didn't want to talk about, I'll just a little summary for people who care at all. I'll just do it quickly. Vivek Ramaswamy thinks that the cancer that's causing Republicans to lose elections since 2016 is Ronna McDaniel. You understand that? He thinks the moderators of the debate should be Tucker Carlson, Elon Musk, and Joe Rogan. He also thinks America should build a wall on the northern border. He also thinks Zelensky is a literal Nazi. Okay, so you missed all that. Tim Scott thinks America...
It's just the Rogan, Musk, Tucker thing.
Yes.
Literally just an attempt to get mentioned by each of those people. That's a bit sad. That's the opposite of self-respect.
That is.
Yeah.
Tim Scott thinks America should launch a war against Iran in order to stop them taking tiny proxy swipes at the US military. He thinks the best way to save Social Security from running huge deficits is to cut taxes. Chris Christie knows that the world existed before the Obama years, and I think he might be the only one on stage who knows that. DeSantis likes saying the phrase words and deeds an awful lot.
Does he?
He does. He said it at least 10 times. He is the new Mr. Deeds. He loves words and deeds. Like he's trying to communicate that some people say words, he says he acts out deeds. I don't know why he likes the word deeds.
Some people say words, some people say words and deeds.
Yes. DeSantis also basically confirmed that Nikki Haley was right last debate when she said he once banned fracking, and he now desperately regrets ever caring for the environment.
Yes.
In both word and deed. Lester Holt has no idea how the futures market works, and it's surprising that Tim Scott does understand how it works, given how poor his future is.
Yeah.
And everyone wants Israel to go harder in Gaza. And the answer to all our problems is to drill more oil. That's what you missed from the Republican debate.
Just to make a slightly serious point about this words and deeds.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear this.
Well, the thing is, words in many cases are deeds, especially if you're a political leader. The way that you do anything is through words.
That is true. We have discussed this before.
Yeah. And, this is one of the major insights of 20th century linguistic philosophy is that there's not some divide between words and deeds. Like, no, words are deeds. And frequently things that political leaders say, even when they're not, directly giving instructions or writing laws or giving orders, they are deeds. They have very significant effects. So I don't know why I'm getting into a philosophical argument with Ron DeSantis. But anyway, there's not a distinction in politics between words and deeds. Words are deeds.
He's a big fan of PEP. I'm sure he'll respond in the comments.
Yes.
Let's get into...
And I'm sure that he's read J.L. Austin's How to Do Things with Words and will retaliate by pointing out that Austin was actually talking about a very narrow technical set of utterances. But anyway.
Oh, that's going to sting when you say that.
It is. I'm bracing myself.
Let's get into our actual content then.
Okay.
Now, this week... we're going to spend a lot of time, I think, talking about what happened this week. First in terms of polling and then in terms of the elections, in particular elections. I like talking about elections where things actually happen rather than people speculate. But let's start with the polling. Ignoring the election, and then we'll get to the election, okay? All right, so the week started off with the New York Times Siena poll, which scared a lot of Democrats. It was a swing state poll. Trump was leading 52-41 in Nevada, 11 points. 48 to 43 in Michigan, 5 points. 49 to 43 in Georgia, 6 points. 48 to 44 in Pennsylvania, 4 points. 49 to 44, 5 points in Arizona. And Biden led by 2 points, 47 to 45 in Wisconsin.
Now, can I just point out one thing from a frequentist statistics standpoint, which didn't really get mentioned? These all had samples of around 600.
Yeah,
which means that quite a few of those, the margin of error it overlaps. And not Nevada though. That looks like that looks like a pretty solid result. Now, that's from a frequentist perspective. That's not the only way to look at statistics. Another way of looking at it is if you look at all of these polls, and even though they're technically within the margin of error, they're all going in the same direction. And you combine that to a lot of polls that seem to have been coming out that seem to be suggesting similar things, even if they're also within the margin of error, then you've got pretty good reason to suggest that the polls are going a certain way.
Yeah. Let me give you a bit more detail on this New York Times Siena poll before we comment a little bit more. The 67% said the country is on the wrong track, while only 22% say it's on the right track. That is one of those examples of what you just said, which is there are a lot of other polls showing the same numbers. The biggest alarms were 18 to 29s, were 47 Biden to 46 Trump. So Biden was only ahead by 1 on the 18 to 29. Hispanics were 50 to 42. In their last election, they were 62 to 36. So that's only 8-point margin. Black voters were at 22% for Trump. In the last election, they were 11% to Trump. Non-white over 45. Over 45s, I know we were slicing and dicing a bit there, and you always make the point, which is a good point. The finer you slice, the larger the margin of error. Non-white over 45s had gone from, at an election time, Biden plus 47 to Biden plus 34, which is a small change, but the big change was non-white under 45s. It went from Biden plus 39 to Biden plus 6.
Yes. Now, non-whites were 838 people in this poll. Under 18 to 29s were 16% of the overall poll. So I think the back of the envelope calculation is that's about 150. That's about 150 people. That, regardless of the approach that you take, I'm not reading very much into that one. That is a very small poll. And as good as Nate usually is at explaining all of the intricacies of that, I think that they glossed over. Because that was one of the headline findings.
It was.
I would need to see a few more polls moving in that direction.
It's funny you say that. We're going to get there.
Okay.
It's interestingly, there was much less movement amongst white people.
Yes.
The white under 45s had gone from Biden plus 5 to Trump plus 8, that's 13 points, but that's a lot less than the non-white was. And the white over 45s basically stayed the same. Trump plus 16 to Trump plus 17. Another thing from this particular poll, in a hypothetical race with an unnamed generic Democrat versus Trump, the generic Democrat led by 8 points. 48 to 40. So that's a 13-point turnaround from the unnamed Democrat to Biden. Even Kamala Harris did better than Biden. She trailed by 3 points in the swing states to Biden's 5. And Trump only got 13% of the black voters when he was against Harris. For Biden, it was 22%. And with Harris, the Hispanics were 59 to 36. For Biden, it was 50 to 42. So it's interesting that the same people, who were turning against Biden were not turning against Harris. Which is interesting.
That is interesting.
But
I just want to say, I've said before the problem with generic Republican or generic Democrat is it's always someone who doesn't exist.
That's true.
It's always people's most idealized version.
That's true.
And that is someone that doesn't, because I think in the same poll, isn't generic Republican winning by enormous numbers?
I don't remember.
Yeah, I think I think someone made this point. It's like, okay, so you can look at these and think Biden's a massive drag on the Democratic Party, but also if you have generic Republican versus Biden, it's something like 56-39.
Yeah.
Like Trump is a huge drag on the Republic vote.
Yeah, there's no doubt that we've got some serious drag happening on all sides here. Now, now we get to the confirmation bit because I made exactly the same point you made on Planet America Wednesday when we talked about this.
Yes.
I didn't talk about the margin of error, but I was thinking about that.
Yes,
but I also thought it's weird that Biden moved 22 points down on the young vote.
Yeah.
In the same poll that he moved up 5 points on the senior vote. That would. I mean, even though you could move in different directions, it's strange to be such a large. I was thinking. I said on the show that's weird.
Yeah.
And I'd like to see some kind of confirmation from other polls.
Yes.
Yesterday, CNN put out a poll. Trump leading by 49-45. Trump leading 48-47 amongst 18 to 34s. Biden leading by 5 amongst over 65s. Trump winning 23% of the black voters. Latinos, Biden winning 50-46. Almost identical numbers.
Okay.
Now, this was the national poll rather than swing state poll, but almost identical
Biden
numbers.
winning with over 65.
Yeah. Both of them had Biden winning by 5. The over 65s. And but all the numbers, all those weird numbers, exactly the same as CNN. Now, doesn't mean they're right.
No.
But it gives me more confidence than I had before.
Yes, yeah.
And if I saw a third poll, and I'm sure there will be soon, but if the third poll is the same numbers, then I'll have a lot more confidence. But anyway, I just want to flag that. That's the first thing. There is some corroboration there.
Yeah.
CBS had a few other worries as well on polling. They had another Trump 51, Biden 48 poll. 47% chose the option peace and stability would increase in the world if Trump gets his old job back. 31% said that if Biden was re-elected. 49% said Biden winning a second term would increase the chances the United States will become embroiled in a war overseas, compared to 39% who said the same about Trump. And I'm flagging this because you can totally see Trump making that argument.
Yes,
They can say, Biden's got America into a bunch of wars. I never got America into any wars. And that, I could see it being a very effective argument if Israel and Ukraine end poorly.
Well, look, Trump in his foreign policy was all about making threats and then not following through on them. The number of countries he threatened, the number of people he threatened, and then just never did anything about it, especially North Korea and Iran. The first term actually seems to suggest that he loved making threats, but didn't ever actually want to, be responsible for military deployment. Now, you can have an argument about whether that is good foreign policy or not, but I think that there's some rationality to that response given by people in that, we can see that there are things that Biden would definitely commit to that Trump wouldn't. Like if Russia if there was a Russian incursion into Poland, Biden would honour the NATO commitment. Yeah. Would Trump?
I don't know.
I mean, I
can tell you this much: if there was a Russian incursion into Montenegro, he wouldn't. I'll tell you that much. So it's
if there actually was a Chinese invasion of Taiwan, I don't know what Biden would do, but Biden has gone out of his way to give every possible indication within the limits of US policy that the US would be at war there. Would Trump be? That was an issue that Trump didn't want to talk about during his presidency. For him, it was all about the deficit. So this is a separate question from whether this is actually good foreign policy or not, because Trump certainly loved to make threats. But I think there's some rationality in that answer that people have given.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And also 45% said their personal finances will be better off under Trump compared to 18% who said the same under Biden. And in a Biden-Trump rematch, Biden voters, like, is one of those ones where they provide adjectives and you choose.
Yeah.
The two adjectives that the Biden voters chose the most were nervous at 74% and frustrated at 72%.
Yep.
The two adjectives the Trump voters picked the most were hopeful at 64% and motivated at 62%.
Yeah.
So I thought that was quite interesting as well.
Yeah.
Another interesting thing, well, we're talking about the war thing. 26% said Biden would support Israel too much compared to 20% who said that of Trump.
Right.
31% said that Biden would support Israel too little. 23% said that of Trump. So Biden's been doubted on both sides once compared to Trump.
Yes.
Now, what that tells me is not that Trump's somehow better on both ends. What it tells me is that people are doubting Biden's ability to conduct a war.
Yes, yeah.
That's what that's telling me.
Yep.
And so I think he's very vulnerable to events.
Yes, yeah.
And then maybe events will be kind to him.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
if they're not kind, I think he's very vulnerable in that area. So
now, let me just make it clear. In reality, Trump had the most garbage Middle East policy of any president with the possible exception of George W. Bush.
you have made that clear, but remind people why.
Yeah, it was absolute garbage. So even though he probably did genuinely want to negotiate peace between Israel and the Palestinians, which was a reflection of his own beliefs in his deal-making ability, it became very clear that it wasn't going to happen. There was nothing that the United States was going to offer nothing that the Trump administration was going to offer that the Palestinians were interested in. Basically, all that he was offering was large amounts of aid. So instead went down this Netanyahu path of thinking that the path to peace in the Middle East was negotiating normalization of relations between Israel and various Arab states who would be unified by their opposition to Iran. So this was the centerpiece. So Trump gave a freer hand to Netanyahu than any other US president had given him. Made all these moves that were pleasing his evangelical constituency, like moving the US embassy to Jerusalem, while pushing for the negotiation of these. Of the normalization between Israel and the Arab states. Now, there was a huge and hugely exaggerated hoopla about the fact that Israel and the UAE and Bahrain negotiate. That was the Abraham Accords, negotiated these agreements. UAE and Bahrain, in reality, neither of them have ever been at war with Israel. UAE and Israeli militaries were actually cooperating with each other. So this was really nothing really to get excited about. A few weeks ago, as I said, its major impact was on airline routes rather than anything else. The big hope was that Saudi Arabia would join. That was the purpose of the Abraham Accords, was to try to get Saudi Arabia to join. That would be the final. That would be the absolute game changer in the region. If there was normalization of relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia, Biden continued this policy in the hope that Saudi Arabia would then be able to pressure Israel into a two-state solution, which of course completely ignored the reality of Israeli coalitional politics, which is Netanyahu. At this point, it was just he kept fighting elections in order to stay out of jail, essentially, which drove him into increasingly further right coalitions of people who would never entertain anything like a two-state solution. So really, the Abraham Accords, it was trying to negotiate new relationships between Israel and the Arab states while ignoring the Palestinian issue.
And we've now seen, in hindsight, if we didn't know before,
Yes.
that 6 years of drift
Yes.
in the Palestinian issue has not helped.
Absolutely not. Yeah, absolutely not. We've also seen Israel-Saudi Arabia normalization is as far away as it ever was. If anything, Saudi Arabia is getting closer towards Iran. Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any other thoughts about polling before we move to the election? I've got a few thoughts, but do you have any other thoughts about the polls? Any considerations we should have? Any qualifiers? I'm about to have a few qualifiers. Some of them might be ones that you might be thinking of, but do you have any?
Just to restate, with the movement of the Latino vote,
yes,
it's still that is still well within historical norms.
Yes.
Like George W. Bush got 40, well, according to one very prominent exit poll, got 44% of the Latino vote.
Which is essentially where they're at the moment.
Yeah,
according to these polls.
In 2004. Yeah. And, Reagan got pretty high. As far as the black vote goes, it would be... for years, political scientists have been writing about the fact that there are always, in surveys, far more conservative identifying African Americans than Republican voting African Americans. Now, to some extent, that is true of the population as a whole, in that there are, it's different with the population as a whole. With the population as a whole, there's always far more conservative identifiers than Republican identifiers. With African Americans, it's not just more conservative identifiers than Republican identifiers, it's far more conservative identifiers than Republican voters.
Yes.
Whereas with the country as a whole, there's slightly more Republican voters than conservative identifiers. So Tasha Philpott wrote a book in 2017, which I'm not going to recommend because I actually haven't read it, about the paradox of black conservatives. Hakeem Jefferson from Stanford University has said it's not actually that much of a paradox, that when you use identification terms in a survey, black people don't understand them in the same way that white people understand them, and that's actually what it accounts for. But it is like it's an interesting thought exercise that, so with both blacks and Latinos, there have arguably been just a lot more conservatives than actual Republican voters in that group. And if Trump or the Trump Republican Party has somehow cracked the code to actually get those conservative voters of colour voting for the Conservative Party, then that would be a significant realignment. But my hunch is, and I think this is reflected anywhere in the world where these kinds of realignments take place, is that those realignments don't come without a cost. Getting conservative voters of colour seems to come at the cost of losing some white conservatives or white moderate voters. And it's going to be on different issues. Yeah. So that's my hunch about what's going on there.
I think that's probably correct.
Yes.
Okay, I'll go again to my qualifiers, which you may have something to say about. First one is, there are other polls. Why are we focus on this one? There's a million polls out there. This poll isn't any better than...
This is the New York Times.
Yeah, but it's just one poll. Well, no. There have been 5 national polls this month. Trump's won all of them. Okay, so
yes,
next one. This always happens in the third year of the presidency. Where have you been, Chaz? The third year of every presidency sucks. Right?
So are you just throwing garbage arguments at yourself now so that you can swat them away?
This is what I'm doing.
Okay.
This is what I'm doing.
Just so that everyone knows.
This is not a garbage argument. This is true. This is true, but in this case, it's not. I'm throwing up some straw men. Yes, that's what I'm doing. This always happens in the third year. Look at Obama in the third year. He sucked in the third year. He didn't suck as much.
Yeah, I never got the sense in Obama's third year that he was going to lose.
No. Well, he had a few more tools at his disposal, I feel, that Biden has. Mind you, he was up against Romney, not Trump.
Yeah.
So he had better opposition as well.
Yes.
But yeah, no. Biden's CNN approval's 39%. Obama's was like 42 at this point in time. Yeah. Trump's was 41, and he lost.
Yep.
COVID helped. But the only person in history that Biden is beating right now is Carter on 32%. All right. So it's a pretty bad third year, even by the standards of third years, right? And but yes, everyone's third year is low, but this is pretty low. Economic numbers may change. Those like every one of these polls shows Biden doing pathetically on the economy, right? We're already seeing plenty of green shoots in the economy.
Yes.
Right? Now, I've said many times on this podcast that it takes a long time for economic vibes to catch up with the statistics. And there are some genuinely good random stats out there at the moment.
Yep.
For instance, the Consumer Confidence Survey, we never talk about this one. Job satisfaction in 2022 reached record highs at 62.3%. They've been measuring that for like 50 years.
Yeah, yep.
Like that's a good measure. And like obviously the GDP growth was very good this particular quarter. If the economy holds, then those economic numbers you'd expect to go up.
Yes.
To a certain extent.
But it might not.
It might not hold. And in particular, what the last 6 months has been a real sawtooth effect. It's been going up and down and up and down and up and down. If that keeps on going, then every time it goes down, you're starting from square one again. So they need to hold for a sustained period of time to even have a chance of those numbers changing. But, maybe.
Yeah.
The voters, this is an interesting argument. The voters that Biden has lost might be quite gettable.
Yes, yeah.
11% of the New York Times Harris supporters who didn't back Biden 11% of New York Times let me say that again. 11% of the Kamala Harris supporters, full stop, didn't back Biden in the New York Times poll, okay? 2/3 of those are either non-white or younger than 30, who you'd feel would generally lean towards Biden. Or the Democrats. If all Harris voters supported Biden, he would have been ahead in that poll 49 to 47. Okay? Now, 43% of the Kamala not Joe voters said there's, quote, not really any chance that they will support Biden. That's what they said.
Yeah.
But you'd think that if they're willing to support Kamala Harris, like Joe Biden's got to be an opportunity. It's got to be a chance.
Yes, yeah. Think actuarially, people. Yes.
So I mean, that one is, I think, a reasonable point to make.
Yeah.
It's especially with a year to go. And this is another, I think, great point.
Yes.
My straw man's really thinking hard here.
Yeah.
The Republicans have an obvious motivational edge right now.
Yes,
and that reflects itself in polling.
It does.
Yeah.
And this is something I've been thinking about the recent polls is, young progressives are really pissed off with Biden.
Especially with Israel.
Yeah.
Which we're going to get to.
Yeah, at the moment. And it could be the case that, people who are particularly motivated to answer polls at the moment are the ones who are pissed off enough that they'll say, I'm not voting for Joe Biden.
Yeah, and look, and I've got numbers to back this up. In the CNN poll, 71% of Republican-leaning voters say they're extremely motivated to vote in next year's presidential election versus 61% of Democrat-leaning voters.
Yes.
Those two numbers always match up.
Yes.
Or get very close to matching up at election time. If they don't, then you're in real trouble.
Yes, yeah.
But they usually get real close to matching up.
Yes,
and right now, Republicans have the motivational edge.
Yes.
And usually they do better in polls when they do.
Yeah.
This is what I actually think is the biggest factor, which is we're going to, I don't want to foreshadow what's coming up later in the podcast, but I'm going to come back to this.
Yeah.
I think this is a huge point, which is right now the attention is on Biden.
Yes, absolutely.
The entire news environment right now is focused on Biden. Economy news, Israel.
Yeah.
Trump's disappeared.
Yes.
The only trial he's attending is one which hasn't been filmed.
Yes.
Right? His rallies aren't covered like they used to be covered.
No.
He's just not doing the rounds in your face. If there's one thing we've learned over the last 7 years, it's that absence makes the Trump grow fonder.
Yes.
Honestly, every single time Trump's in your face, his poll numbers go down.
Yes.
He's going to be in your face next year so much.
Yes, yeah.
All those other trials are being filmed.
Yes.
Right? He's going to be all over the TV. He's going to be so annoying during those trials.
Yes.
And he's going to be running for election at that point in time.
Yeah.
So my bet is that right now is Trump's high point.
Yeah.
Because from now on, we're going to see so much more of him.
Yes, yeah.
So I think that's a factor.
So apart from the polls themselves, the polls generated a lot of commentary about, so should Democrats actually shit the bed and basically change candidates?
Yeah.
Do you see any possibility that they would? Because I still just don't see it.
Okay, number one, nothing's happening if Biden doesn't let it happen.
Yes,
that's the first thing.
That's my
first
thought.
thing.
Yes,
Newsom is not an idiot. Newsom is not going to challenge Biden when Biden doesn't want to be challenged.
Yes, yeah.
Right? The only realistic chance you're going to get a top contender into that race, as opposed to Dean Phillips, is if Biden steps down.
Yeah.
I've seen nothing from Biden.
No.
That's just to me that he would ever step down.
No. As we've said before, you wouldn't be surprised if there was a medical emergency that forced him to step down, but he did not spend 46 years in Congress trying to be president to announce that he wouldn't run for a second term. He is definitely still confident that he'll beat Trump.
Yeah. And I continue to think that even if he definitely is,
Yes,
and the thing, even if Biden stepped down, I continue to think that I don't think Kamala Harris is going to be a strong candidate.
No.
And I think that what it would take for Kamala Harris to not be the candidate would fuck the Democrats up.
Yes, yeah.
And I think that it's just not worth their while.
Yeah.
I think they got to dance with the one that brung them.
That's right. Regardless of whatever strong hints David Axelrod keeps dropping.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's a pretty strong hint.
Yeah.
I mean, I continue to. I did pose the hypothetical about 6 or 7 podcasts ago that I reckon in an alternative universe where Me Too happened in a slightly different way.
Yeah.
Right now, it's Al Franken's second term.
Yes.
And I think he would have beaten Trump, and I think he'd be running for re-election, and he'd be probably quite successful. But that's not the world we live in, so let's not worry about that.
Yeah, comedians don't get to be president of every country. Only some countries.
Only countries where they can be Nazis as well, according to Vivek Ramaswamy. Another thing, a good advertising campaign could make a difference because one of the polls out there is a Navigator poll. It found that when you inform voters about what Biden has achieved, like for instance allowing Medicare to negotiate for lower drug costs, for the bipartisan law to rebuild roads and bridges, and efforts that can create more manufacturing jobs in Australia, in America, his favorability goes up a lot. But of course, the people who don't know that kind of thing already are probably the hardest to reach.
Yes, I was going to say
that's kind of dreamland.
Easier said than done, and we'll be facing a lot of counter-programming at the same time.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
The other thing, of course, is the effect third parties have, which is such a big issue. In that New York Times poll, when you add RFK, it was Trump 35, Biden 33, Kennedy 24. For 18 to 29s, for 18 to 29s, it was Biden 35, RFK 30, Trump 28.
Fuck me.
Yeah.
Okay, I got to own up. I've completely underestimated RFK.
Well, I don't think he's going to be getting that when it comes to elections.
No, but I wouldn't have imagined him getting it now.
Yeah, well, he is.
Wow.
Because it's not just that poll. It's not just that poll. You add him in any poll, he's in the 20s at the moment.
Because Democrats have soured on him. I mean, I saw Republicans doing a big souring on him about a month ago, but that hasn't trickled down yet.
Here's the thing: when it comes to the double haters, people who hate
the double haters,
the people who hate both Biden and Trump, they really like Kennedy. He just sweeps the double haters. Like I saw a poll, I think it was New York Times, where he got 60% of the double haters. And this is going to be an election where we're going to have a record number of double haters.
Wow.
So that's going to...
Because, I mean, that 20%, that gives him a higher popularity with America than with his own family.
Yes, it does.
Significantly higher. Because with his own family, it's somewhere around 0%. Yeah.
But also, I'll quote you something from the New York Times, which I thought was a good point.
Yeah.
This is a direct quote. When asked about the likeliest 2024 matchup, Mr. Biden versus Mr. Trump, only 2% of those polled said they would support another candidate. But when Mr. Kennedy's name was included as an option, nearly a quarter said they would choose him. Those findings suggest that Mr. Kennedy is less a fixed political figure in the minds of voters than he's a vessel to register unhappiness about the choice between Mr. Biden and Mr. Trump.
He's a floating signifier.
There you go.
Yes.
So that's another reason why I think his numbers are going to fly down as time goes on.
Fly down.
Plunge
down.
Yes. And I don't think he's going to get on many ballots anyway.
Yeah.
I just don't think he's organised.
No, he's not. But I'm just shocked by... Yeah, anyway.
And it also means he's very vulnerable to a negative campaign. And there's going
I think is going to happen. But okay,
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. So anyway, so there you go. All right. And just one more thing before we get into the elections.
Yeah.
I mentioned the young vote before. I think this is where it's really at. I think Israel's affecting the young people's vote in a big way. In an Economist YouGov poll, just 24% of 18 to 29s approved of Biden's handling of Israel. In Quinnipiac, between September and October, Biden with under 35s went from plus 18 to plus 2. Mm-hmm. And 21% of under 35s in that poll approved of his Israel policy. 60% of seniors did.
Yeah.
So that might be one of the reasons why he's doing okay with seniors as well.
Oh, okay.
Look, I mean, I don't think this is the only reason he's doing poorly with the youth, but I think that this is a particularly bad time.
It is,
for
For
Biden. that reason, I think that will bounce back unless Israel stays in the news.
If you're looking for a ray of sunshine in all of this, most of the time people don't have foreign policy issues very high on the agenda when they're actually voting. That's different from when they're answering opinion polls, when things are really, happening in a very visible way. Most of the time, foreign policy matters in elections when the United States is directly involved in a controversial war.
Yes.
So 2008 election, 2004 election, 1968, 1972. Now, that could happen in the next year. It actually could.
It could.
I can see why Biden, with his experience with foreign policy as vice president, president, and in the Senate, would not be too worried about this at the moment, although maybe he should be. But I think with Biden, you often get the sense that he is taking certain constituencies for granted that maybe he should not be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, whether he is or not, that's where we're at.
Yeah.
Okay, now I just spent 25 minutes on the pre-polls before we got to the elections.
Yes.
Because I figured if you can't do this with PEP, when can you do it?
No, that's right.
So now let's
You're not going to get this anywhere else.
No, you are not. So let's introduce the elections now, the midterms.
Yes.
Okay, shall we start
the ultimate off year.
Yes. Shall we start with Ohio?
Yes, let's start with Ohio. Yeah. So, Ohio, as expected, enshrined the right to abortion in the state constitution by, I think it was almost exactly the same margin as earlier this year. They rejected a measure put forward by Republicans that would move the threshold up to 60%.
An identical margin, 57% they got.
Yes.
Which was what their polling for abortion was at the time as well.
Yes.
It seems like there's just 57% just baked in.
So that was a completely expected result. And I suppose if you're getting that kind of constituency, it's also to be expected that marijuana legalization got up in Ohio, making it the 24th state.
It was?
Yes.
56%?
Yep.
Same number?
Yes. So, and I think I saw some exit polling that suggested that there was the ratio of Biden to Trump voters in that particular election was a lot higher than it is in a normal Ohio.
I have the numbers.
Presidential. What are the numbers?
In 2020, Trump won by 8.
Yes.
In that election, just then, the people in terms of who voted for who in 2020, it was a Biden +2
right,
electorate.
Yes, yeah.
So 10-point swing to Biden.
Yes. Now, this is something that indicates the pro-choice side is just far more motivated on this issue at the moment than the pro-life side, which means the pro-choice motivation goes beyond the hardcore base of activists, whereas the pro-life motivation doesn't seem to extend very far beyond that hardcore base. So I would say, there would be some states probably where you could put abortion on the ballot and you'd actually get an anti-abortion outcome, but it's not going to be very many given the number of states where it's been, in none of these has the election been genuinely close. Kentucky, Kansas, Montana, Ohio, Michigan, they've all been by significant enough margins that the result was very, very clear, very, very early. And also in all of them, that's what polling suggested was going to happen. Yeah. So we can talk about the implications of that nationally, or do you want to do that later?
I think let's save that.
Yep.
Let's save that because we've got a few abortion states coming up.
Yes, yeah.
But, I would just say about Ohio in particular.
Yes.
That we should say Amendment 1, which is what we're talking about, is actually quite a liberal abortion law.
Yes, yeah, it is.
What it does is it gives people the right to make and carry out one's own reproductive decisions and only allows the state to prohibit an abortion after an unborn child is determined by a pregnant woman's treating physician to be viable.
Yes.
So that's like 22 weeks, I guess.
Yeah.
And only if the physician does not consider the abortion necessary to protect the pregnant woman's life or health.
Yes.
And we've said this 1,000 times. As soon as you see that word health, that means anyone can get an abortion.
Yes.
Because that includes mental health, right? And unless you're someone who has no problems whatsoever with getting abortions, no issues at all, with carrying a baby to term that you don't want, most people, that would affect your mental health.
Yeah.
And so you can get an abortion.
Yeah.
Right? And so this is effectively saying that there are no restrictions on a good faith abortion.
Yes, yeah.
Essentially. And now that is quite liberal for a red state.
Yeah.
Right? But the reason for this is it's their own damn fault. And I mean the Republicans. And I'll tell you why. Because Ohio used to have a completely normal abortion law, which was I think it was 18 weeks or 16, something like that. They had something which was fairly standard, right?
Yeah.
And then they got a little bit greedy when Dobbs passed, and then they went for the 6-week ban, which is effectively a complete ban because most people don't even know they're pregnant at that time.
Yep.
And that went straight to court.
Yep.
And that was the moment when the amendment was held.
Yes.
Before it had been implemented.
Yes.
So it was hanging over everyone's head.
Yes.
This impending very strict law.
Yes, yeah.
And so when the women of Ohio have the choice between
the most liberal option and the most conservative option,
they're going to pick the
every
liberal
time
one.
They'll take the most liberal option.
Well, 57% of the time they'll pick the most liberal option.
And
so
I think
fault.
This is one of the dynamics that has become really clear is that, both sides do draw on kind of extreme scenarios a lot. People prefer the extreme liberal scenario to the extreme conservative scenario. And a ban is a ban.
Yeah.
Like this fantasy that, 15 weeks will be a good compromise. No. The reality is Roe versus Wade was the compromise. That was the compromise. Roe versus Wade hardly ever had less than 60% of national support. Hardly ever had less than the kind of numbers that we see now in red states rejecting abortion bans. That was the compromise.
Yeah, I think the mistake that the pro-life people make in particular is they love, these guys are really, really into week-by-week analysis of pregnancies, right?
Yes, yeah.
And they think everyone out there thinks like that. And they go, well, 13 weeks is different to 14 weeks, which is different to 15 weeks. Like they think like that. And in reality, they are different. But when you're talking about some schlub on the street, they're not thinking about weeks of pregnancies, right? And so when you see certain polls, you get some wildly different results. Based on the number of weeks, right? And we're going to get to some of them with Virginia in a second.
Yes.
But what I think that these people fail to realize that for a normal person, if with Roe versus Wade, when that was just the standard, like a lot of people thought, this is cool. And if you restrict me more than this, then that's not cool.
Yes.
And they're not thinking, 26 weeks is the right number. Or 22 weeks. They're thinking, whatever we got at the moment is the right number.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah.
And if you fuck around with me, that's the wrong number.
Yes.
That's the way they think.
Yeah.
And so I think these guys convince themselves, the pro-lifers convince themselves that if they get enough people answering a poll saying X weeks is popular or not popular, that will affect people's behavior. But it doesn't.
No.
It's just purely academic, those polls.
Yeah. And so there's been a lot of, over the last 48 hours, every, potential presidential candidate has had to answer questions about what's gone wrong.
Yeah.
And everyone is admitting that they are losing on this issue. The most common response is we've got to, make the message better. JD Vance, not a candidate this time around, but will be an inevitable candidate at some point, is running this new right line of we've actually got to make this a bigger issue. We've got to be more encouraging of birth in general. There's got to be more support for parents. Of course, the ultimate new right dream is that every family can run on a single income, so there's a parent at home to raise the child. And the argument of people like him would be that's the entire vision that you've got to sell. It's actually got to be a far more comprehensively conservative vision where unplanned pregnancy is not a scary thing because there's this family structure bolstered essentially by a conservative welfare state that will, that will make every pregnancy more welcome. But yeah, there are a lot of people just saying, oh, it's the wrong message. I think DeSantis is, claiming that they somehow got it right in Florida and everyone else has got it wrong.
Yeah, that's what he said in the debate.
Yes.
He said the pro-life guys have just dropped the ball.
Yeah.
I should say, Ohio had some great spin. The Ohio pro-life guys were calling this amendment the ACLU's Extreme Anti-Parent Amendment.
Oh, wow.
Oh, I can't believe that didn't work. It's an anti-parent amendment. Yeah. Okay. So this was the seventh. So it's now 7-0 since Dobbs. This was the seventh one in a row.
Yeah. By the way, the states where the anti-abortion side would actually win, that's never going to make it to the ballot, or it's unlikely ever to make it to the ballot.
Yeah. Fair. Okay. All right. So let's go to Virginia now. Unless you got more to say about Ohio. Okay. All right, let's go to Virginia. This was. Oh, you start talking about Virginia. Go.
Well, okay. Yeah. Relating to two things that we've been talking about. Firstly, Youngkin was another charlatan who wanted to claim that he had actually cracked the formula for selling hardline anti-abortion bans, and it was the 15-week formula. Yeah. He was very confident about this election. He staked a huge amount of political capital on it, and a lot of newspapers were talking up the chances, actually, of Republicans claiming the Senate, which was narrowly held by Democrats, which would give them unified control of Virginia for the first time since 2012, which would be pretty remarkable given that there was unified Democratic control until 2021. But instead, what happened was not only that Democrats actually held the Senate, I think they did lose one seat.
Lost one seat, yeah.
But they actually regained the House of Delegates.
They did.
That is the lower house. Now, that was unexpected. Of all of the results that happened that day, which were nearly uniformly good for Democrats, that would actually be the one, I think, that would give Democrats the most hope, that actually would have them thinking that the 2024 election is still winnable. Another thing related to what we just said, though, the Ohio people talk about this extreme anti-parent amendment was, I think that Youngkin's shown us the limits of all of this parents' rights bullshit. And it is bullshit. Parents' rights is one of the most bullshit movements I have seen in American politics the entire time that I have been studying it. But DeSantis and Youngkin have kind of jointly convinced Republicans, as well as quite a few misguided Australian conservatives, that this is the wave of the future. That your median voter is actually one of the screaming lunatics who turns up to a school board meeting to demand that all of the books be removed from the library shelves. Holy shit. They are turning out to be very, very wrong.
I have a number for you.
Yes.
This is the Washington Post poll.
Yes.
In Virginia, Democrats are ahead 47-41 on education in Virginia.
Yes.
Like they and
that was in a state where everyone was pissed off at Democrats because of COVID school closings.
Yeah.
And I think that's another dynamic that was going on. People mistook that for endorsement of the overall let's pull books off the library shelves. Let's refuse to let our precious children hear the word sex. They were confusing that with the far bigger level of pissed offedness about COVID.
Well, as it turned out, during this election, the Democrats were running culture war ads against the Republicans about schools. I've got one right here.
The Diary of Anne Frank, To Kill a Mockingbird, Because of Siobhan Donovan's new law, MAGA Republicans are banning books like these across Virginia, censoring what our students learn. As a teacher, Skylar Van Valkenburg knows the difference one book can make for a child. That's why Van Valkenburg works with teachers and parents to strengthen Henrico Public Schools and help our students succeed.
I'm Skylar Van Valkenburg, candidate for state senate, and my campaign paid for this ad.
By the way, people often ask me when I mention names of various American politicians, like, are these people real?
Yeah.
Because so many American names have these German or Scandinavian origins that are kind of long and funny sounding. Yeah. This is your classic example. Skylar Van Valkenburg versus Maria Donovan.
Yeah. Skylar Van Valkenburg sounds very much like a bad guy in a Marvel movie, but he won. He won.
He did.
Through culture war.
He beat the Donovan agenda. Yes. Yeah.
So as you're saying, that like their luck ran out on this particular culture war.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, as well, you may have heard of the Mothers for Liberty.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
The Hitler quoting Mothers for Liberty.
Yeah. Do you want to just explain who they are while I get the numbers?
Yeah. So it's this group that really tied itself to DeSantis. It can only be described as an AstroTurf group that sprung up at some point last year, establishing chapters mainly in an online sense all over the country. The Carmel, Indiana Mothers for Liberty were the ones who put a massive Hitler quote right in the middle of their very first Facebook newsletter. Which wasn't even a Hitler quote. It's just this quote attributed to Hitler about something to do with if we control the youth, we control the future, which is, this, I think, fake quote often cited by right-wingers as evidence for, this is the left's terrible educational agenda. But it was kind of posted on this Facebook newsletter in a way that, suggested this is our agenda.
I found the numbers.
Probably best just to avoid either fake or real Hitler quotes altogether.
Thank you for padding in such an entertaining way.
Yeah.
Mothers for Liberty backed candidates in Minnesota, 0 out of 4 won. Mothers for Liberty backed candidates in Washington State, 0 out of 4 won. Mothers for Liberty backed candidates in New Jersey, 4 out of 19 won. Mothers for Liberty backed candidates in Ohio, 5 out of 25 won. Mothers for Liberty backed candidates in Virginia, 1 out of 6 won. And that's when I stopped collating stats because I had to come and record this podcast. But it goes on.
Yes.
They really tanked it. So that particular part of the culture war was losing.
Yes. Yeah. No, definitely.
So So anyway, you got more to say about the Virginia or?
Not really.
No. Okay. Well,
I just want to reiterate. Parents' rights. The reason why you send your children to school is because you actually trust other people to teach them.
It's true.
Obviously there is a substantial homeschooling movement in the US, which is actually
getting bigger.
Yeah, getting bigger. And that actually puts its money where its mouth is. That, and there's a variety of reasons why people do homeschooling. Like there are a lot of people who, because their children are on the spectrum or have other kinds of problems that they opt for homeschooling. So it's not just an exclusively conservative thing. But there is a big conservative homeschooling movement, although the way that is now backed by government money, as well as coordinated curricula, coordinated activities, varsity sports teams, actually suggests it's basically privatization of education rather than genuine homeschooling, often at a lower standard than public education. But parents' rights, it's bullshit.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to say a couple of things at Virginia, which you may want to jump into as well.
Yep.
Okay, first of all, I just need to say this was a huge campaign.
Yes.
Right. In 2019, for the same races, they spent a little under $120 million. This time it was $160 million. As you say, it was for both houses were very narrowly held, one on each side before the race. And and there was there were some fun candidates as well. Apart from our Skylarkin guy, whatever his name was,
Skylar Van Valkenburg.
Thank you very much. There were some fun candidates. I'm not sure if you're across the Speaker of the House, the new Speaker of the House. His name's Don Scott. and he was apprehended.
Solid. 2 first names.
Yeah, well, you know what they say about not trusting people with 2 first names? He was apprehended in 1994 by federal agents in a Denny's restaurant, running into the bathroom and desperately trying to flush thousands of dollars in drug money down the toilets. He was unsuccessful. And so he spent 7.5 years in prison, and now he's the Speaker of the House.
Look, there's a lot of things that people unsuccessfully and desperately try to flush in Denny's toilets. Not all of it is a crime, but yeah.
But all of it should be a crime. I'm going to put a note on that for the blurb.
Yeah, if you ever want to see real America, go to a Denny's at 2 a.m. on a Sunday.
I have mentioned to you, I think off the air, probably not on the air, is about there's the even more infamous than Glenn Youngkin.
Yeah.
Is Susanna Gibson, who's this very, very minor candidate.
Oh, yes.
In the biggest, in the most swingy seat.
Yeah.
In the Virginia House of Delegates, who basically got caught making money on an OnlyFans equivalent site, having sex with her husband.
Yeah.
And she, and
an OnlyFans knockoff.
Yeah.
Site, yeah.
And normally, if this was any time up to a couple of years ago, there'd be immediate resignation.
Yes, yeah.
But now it's like, well, so what?
Yeah.
Like, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
And she didn't even apologize. She was just like, you know what?
Yeah.
I was just making some money.
That's right.
Deal with it.
Yeah.
And she ended up losing, but only just. She lost 51-49. But like in the end, it might not have made any difference whatsoever. Because it was pretty much a 50-50 seat. So
yeah.
So that which is kind of interesting. Even though this was not about Youngkin, this was about the 2 houses.
Yes, yeah.
The actual election was all about Youngkin.
It's totally about Youngkin.
Yeah, and number one, he's personally popular. He's got a 54% approval rating. Yeah. And he chose to make it all about him because he chose to make it an abortion election.
Yes.
He did not need to do that.
He didn't.
Like Virginia, once again, like Ohio, had a perfectly decent abortion law there. I think it was 26 weeks in Virginia.
Yeah.
He wanted to implement the 15-week ban.
Yeah.
He thought he'd cracked the code, as you say.
Yes. Yeah.
He thought he knew the way to spin it.
Yeah.
Like whether he was going to then parachute into the presidential race now or maybe in 4 years' time.
Yeah, I don't think he was ever planning for 2024.
Yeah, it was getting a bit late.
That was always very speculative. But, I mean, it was... there was enough chatter about it to make Trump come up with a racist nickname for him, but
when you're in Virginia and you can only serve 1 term at a time as governor, which you guys might not know, that's the case.
Yep.
Going to do 1 term. You can do a first term and then have a second term 4 years after that.
Yes, yeah.
You can't do it in a row. It really encourages you to either run for the Senate or run for president.
Yes.
And the senators are both young.
Yes, yeah.
So that's hard for Youngkin.
Yeah.
So 2028 he could be planning right now.
Yes.
So anyway, for whatever reason, he decided to do it, and he had this brainwave that the problem with the ban is that it's called a ban. And he thought to himself, maybe if you didn't call it a ban, people wouldn't mind it. Hence this ad.
It's just not true. They're lies about abortion. It's disinformation. Politics at its worst. Here's the truth. There is no ban. Virginia Republicans support a reasonable 15-week limit with exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. It's a common sense position that most Virginians support too. But Virginia Democrats support no limits on abortion.
All the way up to 40 weeks.
Reasonable limits or no limits at all. That's the truth.
It's just a reasonable limit. It's not a ban. Now that message probably didn't reverberate quite as well as he thought. But having said that, he kept on riding that hobby horse. And right up to the election, he was still pushing it hard. He went on to... He was doing national political shows where all he was talking about was his abortion idea.
Yeah.
He was pretty confident. Like this was like 2 days before the election. I'll just play you this bit here.
And I'll just remind you that just 4 years ago in Virginia, they were one vote away from the Democrats passing a bill that would extend abortion rights all the way up through and including birth, paid for by taxpayer money. I really feel that this is a moment for us to come together around reasonable limits where we can protect life at 15 weeks where a baby feels pain, with full exceptions in the case of rape and incest and when the mother's life is at risk. And I think this is a place that Virginians can come together. all the way up through birth is way too extreme. This is a place we can come together and settle on a very difficult topic, and I think we can lead here as opposed to fight.
Well, but current Virginia law says it has 26 weeks, has abortion access up to 26 weeks. Why not just leave that law in place?
What I'm hearing from Virginians, and nearly 70% have responded that they would support a bill to protect life at 15 weeks with full exceptions where a baby can feel pain. And I think this is a reasonable place for us to land. And what's on the ballot, I think, is a choice between no limits and reasonable limits. And I think this is one where Virginians come together around reasonableness.
Wow, that's a very important lesson. Don't say what's on the ballot is my hobby horse when there's a good chance that you could actually lose.
Yeah. Yeah, but I'll give him credit.
Yeah.
I think he sold it as hard as you could possibly sell it.
Yes.
I think he really did. But it's
unpopular.
He's actually performed a service for Republicans here.
Yes.
Because none of them are going to sell this as well as he did.
Yeah.
And still lost.
Yeah.
So he might not enjoy the lesson that he taught Republicans, but is actually a valuable lesson for them. I think. But anyway, so that's what he was doing. And obviously the Democrats were only too happy to take him up on the offer of an abortion election. 40% of Democrat candidates' ads mentioned abortion, according to Ad Impact. Now, this is where we get to the bit I was talking before. I foreshadowed before about the people getting obsessed about the number of weeks in polls. Yep. He cited a poll about what Virginians want. The ad I played before also cited the poll. According to Gallup, only 37%. This is not back in 2022 or 2021. This is now.
Yep.
Only 37% say abortion should be legal in the second trimester. Now, if you ask people now, they say 37% say it should be legal. So that's around 60% saying it should be illegal in the second trimester. Do the math. That's 13 weeks onwards. These guys see those numbers and they go, oh my God, the 15 weeks is a reasonable. If 15 weeks that's with the majority, etc. But people don't think like that. No, they really don't. Yeah, it's and so that's something that these guys need to learn, I feel. Yeah. So why didn't it work then? I've already said one thing. Yeah. I also think that people have seen now a number of Republicans get slippery on this. Yes. DeSantis is a classic example. Yep. Where they had a 15-week ban. Yes. They passed a 15-week ban and then they came right back and passed a 6-week ban. Yes. And so 15-week bans aren't forever necessarily. It's I think people are getting used to with pro-lifers taking what they can get. Yes. And then pushing for more. Yeah.
Because it's a serious issue to them.
Yeah, totally. Amongst women voters who make up more than half of Virginia's election, 70% rated abortion as a very important issue to their vote. Yes. So that shows you how much they made this election about abortion. Yes. And that was up from 42% in 2019. And even in 2019, it was a big issue. So it's, I already mentioned that that this was not the only culture war issue in Virginia. There was also the schools, but also there was a transgender culture war going on as well because there was a transgender delegate who was running for the state senate, Danica Rome, who ended up winning. Yes. The guy who was campaigning against her, his entire campaign was about banning transgender athletes from high school sports. Yes. I wonder why he was running that line. Yeah. She won. Yeah. Yeah, so what we actually saw here was something which is unusual, I think, which is worth noting. Yes. Which is Democrats winning culture war campaigns against Republicans, which is usually not what happens. Usually what happens is the Democrats try and campaign on economics and the Republicans try and run culture war campaigns. And there was a period there for all through the 2000s and the early 2010s where that was the only way Republicans were ever winning. Just culture war, culture war. Now we have a situation where Biden and the Democrats are down by 20 points on the economy. Yes, yeah. And they have abortion and your school. Yes, they're like banning books. Yes, yeah. They've got a bunch of culture war issues at their disposal. Yeah. By the way, the transgender polling, it was, 50 to 33 according to the Washington Post, the voters were supporting Democrats on transgender issues.
Wow, yeah.
So that's a strong
Yes.
issue for Democrats, which you might not have thought it was, but it is. And obviously abortion 51 to 34.
Yes.
So, so we might be seeing the beginnings of the Democrats becoming a culture war party, potentially. Like these things do flip around.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's another thing that this might have been a pivot moment.
Yes.
For the Democrats. So ironically, this whole election was about teaching the Republicans a lesson. It might have been teaching the Democrats a lesson about how they should be running.
Oh, I think everyone can always learn a lesson, Jess.
Yes. Especially when they listen to PEP.
Yes.
Another point I want to make is that Republicans, they did well. Like they didn't win, but they didn't do badly either. Like we shouldn't over-egg what happened there, because the Democrats won 3 seats in the delegates
Yes.
to win that.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like it was a sweep.
No.
Right? And in fact, the Republicans actually won a seat in the Senate, as you said.
Yes, yeah.
But it wasn't enough, right? And the Republicans won every single seat that Biden won by 9 points or less.
Right, yes.
So it's not like they did badly.
Yeah.
Because Virginia's a 10-point, a Biden 10-point
Yes.
state, right? It's a blue state,
Yeah.
to be fair. And Young can only just won in 2021 as well. He only won by
But
2 points.
the caveat on that is the Biden vote and the Democratic vote is extremely concentrated in Virginia in 3 counties.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another caveat is it's an off-year election.
Yes.
Where
It's an off year.
And the president's party doesn't tend to do very well in there.
Yes, yeah.
And the president especially is not doing very well at the moment.
Yes.
So to say, they did pretty much as you'd expect is actually quite good.
Yeah.
So I just want to just flag that. The Republicans won 13 districts that President Biden won in 2020 as well. Anything else on this from me? Just looking down here. No, I got nothing else on Virginia. Got anything else on Virginia? No. Okay. Pennsylvania.
Yes.
There's a Supreme Court seat there.
Yes.
Do you have anything to say about that?
This one, once again, wasn't a surprise.
Yep.
So it was a Liberal justice who had died, right?
Yes.
Yes. Liberal justice who had died was replaced by another Liberal justice in this election. It wouldn't have been determinative of the balance of the court.
They're 5-2.
Yes. Yeah. Nonetheless, though, this is another fairly encouraging sign.
He ran on abortion as well.
Yeah. For Democrats, that following on from the Wisconsin Supreme Court result.
Yep.
Yeah. I think that 10 years ago you would have seen different outcomes in both races, just in terms of the balance of the culture wars then. Yeah.
Let's go to Kentucky.
Yes. Now, Kentucky, we cannot stress enough, is kind of a different place. One of my favourite states in the Union. It's got one of the highest Trump votes in America. Also, one of the highest percentages of Democratic Party registration.
Yes.
In America. I think that the 3 highest, or the 4 highest, I mean, they're mostly pretty surprising. It's Maryland, which is not surprising. But then, the next 3, I think, are Kentucky, West Virginia, and Louisiana. Now, okay, so those are all states that do elect Democrats to statewide office sometimes. So
Governor, absolutely.
Yeah, governor, and West Virginia, of course, until next year has Democratic senator. But
I'm going to run the same quiz on you that I ran on John Barron on Planet America.
Yep.
How many Republican governors do you think there have been in Kentucky in the last 75 years?
It's not that many. 3?
2. You did better than John. John said 4.
Okay.
Go on, yep.
So it has this very high Democratic Party registration, even though at the presidential level it is, very pro-Republican, but at the state level does regularly elect Democratic governors, especially someone who was the son of a previously very popular Democrat. So this is Andy Beshear, son of Steve Beshear. Andy Beshear's COVID measures were actually pretty popular in Kentucky. And I think that that's that's one of the things that helped him. He basically tried to run as hyper-local a race as possible.
Wise.
Distance himself from Biden.
Who had a 22% approval rating in Kentucky.
Yeah. Although did, once again, the abortion issue, which is a national issue, played a big role in it. His Republican opponent did really try to tie himself to Trump, although Trump, in typical Trump fashion, distanced himself immediately from the poor guy as soon as he lost, saying he was a Mitch McConnell protege. But the fact was he had tried to make it a Trump versus Biden election, and it just wasn't. It was Bashir versus Cameron. So once again, this was an expected result. Like, there wasn't hugely reliable polling out of Kentucky, but all of the analysis suggested that Bashir would win. I think he won slightly more comfortably than what was expected in the end.
There weren't many polls, as you say. The last poll before the election had a tie.
Right.
So yeah, the
everyone
poll
seemed to expect him.
the poll a week or two earlier had Bashir ahead by 16 points. So it's not very reliable polling.
Kentucky is different. This, of course, began immediate chatter about, well, what about Bashir as an alternative to Biden?
Yeah.
Hasn't he shown people how it can be done? Look, let us reiterate one of our many golden rules. Just because somebody is a popular governor and gets reelected as a popular governor, it does not mean they are going to be nationally popular.
That's true.
Occasionally it does, right? Occasionally you do get a Bill Clinton character. But as we say, for every Bill Clinton, there are so many more Sarah Palins out there. So many more Scott Walkers. So many more Jeb Bushes.
Yeah. Can I also make the point, before Bill gets too carried away about Andy Bashir?
Yeah.
That is the new savior of the Democrat Party.
Yeah.
That he had a lot of advantages.
Yes.
Like, he had way more money than
Yes.
Dan Cameron for a start.
Yeah.
Like, he outspent him $16.7 million to $3.4 million as of October 23.
Yeah, that's a lot.
And he had a bit more coming as well.
Yeah.
On top of that, it doesn't matter to Republican voters in Kentucky whether they have a Democrat governor, because their legislature is so Republican that they have a veto-proof majority. They can do whatever they want.
Yeah.
So it's not much. If you got a kind of cool guy who's a governor who you go, he's nice enough or whatever.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you just stick with him? Because he can't do any damage. As far as Republicans are concerned.
Yes.
So he was a pretty bruise-free choice for Republicans.
Yes.
Let's put it that way. And he has 60% approval, as you say, off the back of COVID.
Yes.
As you also mentioned, he just like everyone else focused on abortion, although it's a bit weird in Kentucky. Because in Kentucky, abortion is like super illegal. Like, the only exception is for potential death of the mother, and permanent incapacity.
Didn't Kentucky have a ballot measure?
No, their ballot was the opposite. Their ballot was to have abortion be banned in the Constitution.
Right.
They voted for that to not happen.
Okay, but it's still there are still very significant.
But the law is there ain't much abortion, and Bashir was saying we should need to have at least some decent exceptions.
Yeah.
And Dan Cameron was not a fan of that, and so then Bashir ran ads featuring sort of women who were raped when they were 12 years old, and Dan Cameron doesn't support an exemption for this. So that didn't help. Yeah. Sorry, go on. I interrupted a bit.
I can't remember what I was going to say.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I went on a distillery tour in Kentucky once.
Story time.
No, I haven't got a big story here, but first of all, it would just not surprise you to know that most of these distilleries, even though they're historic distilleries, they have burnt down many, many times. It had to be rebuilt. But anyway, I would recommend Woodford Reserve. I think that's the best. That's the best Kentucky bourbon. Elijah Craig is very good. Anything from the Heaven Hills distillery is very good, but there's just so much. Yeah, Bullet is good. Buffalo Trace. I think it's one of these EU style laws that anything that is actual bourbon has to come from Kentucky. So allegedly, it's to do with the water in Kentucky, which is bullshit.
They got Mount Franklin there or something.
Well, this is the thing. So Jack Daniels, which is like one of the, best known global brands of whiskey, is not bourbon. It calls itself Tennessee whiskey.
Oh, I see.
Because it's from over the border. And there's all kinds of whiskey made throughout the US, but it's not allowed to call itself it's not allowed to call itself bourbon.
You're saying there's a law.
Yeah. Damn right there's a law. This is America. If there wasn't a law, like everybody would be calling everything bourbon.
Yeah, it's true.
Yes.
Fair
Yeah.
enough.
But those bourbon barrels, they lose a substantial amount due to evaporation every year.
I thought they lose a substantial amount because of your tours.
So, when you go in, it's just like fumes.
Yeah.
Fumes everywhere. And the tour guide who appeared to be drunk at 10 in the morning said, smell that. We call that the angel's portion. But she might not have been drunk. She might have just been, she's already done a few tours by that point.
Yeah, sure.
Inhaling the fumes. Anyway, it's a great place. It is a fantastic place. Kentucky with some fantastically unique electoral dynamics.
I believe you.
But I would say of all of the results that Democrats had, that's probably the one to read the least into.
Yeah.
Yeah, is the Kentucky result.
Yep. Mississippi, anything to say about that? I don't have much to say about Mississippi.
I think didn't Reeves win by about exactly the same margin he won by last time?
4.6 he won.
Okay, no, that's less. He won by 5.3 last time, which was the closest since 1999 at the time. Okay, so that's a little bit closer.
All I know, I don't know much about this. I just know that Tate Reeves is a dud, and I know that Brendan Presley is Elvis's second cousin. That's all I know.
Sorry, we have not paid very much attention to
Sorry, Mississippi.
Sorry for those of you who are hanging out for deep analysis of the Mississippi results. We are not providing it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well. Okay. So we've given. Do you have any other minor election results you want to talk about? I think we've covered this pretty well.
Just trying to think. Was there anything else? First woman elected mayor of Philadelphia.
Okay. Sure. Why not?
Yeah. No, I got nothing else.
Okay. All right. So, even though, as you said, I agree with you that the delegates' house, the House of Delegates in Virginia, is probably the biggest result, like the most surprising result.
Yes.
Just the fact that everything went kind of right for Democrats, even though not a lot of it was unexpected.
Yes, yeah.
The fact that it all went right doesn't usually happen like that.
It doesn't, no.
That is a good night for the Democrats, right? And this came 2 days after the worst batch of polls ever. And
we'll say about that batch of polls, it's not just the worst of Biden's presidency. That's the worst for a Democrat in about 20 years.
Yeah.
Like, this is the first time in, assuming that those poll results stay reasonably consistent for the rest of the year, this will actually be the first time, I think, in 20 years that Democrats are heading into 2024 potentially as underdogs.
Yeah.
Because, as I say, 2012, Obama was not an underdog going into that race. Actually, 2020, it wasn't clear for all kinds of reasons, but the polls certainly at that point, whenever Biden and Trump were matched up in the polls, was showing Biden up by about 8.
Yeah, I was going to say Biden's well ahead at this point in time.
Or something like that. Prior to 2008, it was everything pointed to Democrats, and prior to 2016. The evidence seemed to be there that the Democrats were set. So I think this is like the most underdog a Democrat has looked for 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even going back to John Kerry was looking better than this in 2004.
Yeah.
It's so I think I don't remember Al Gore what it was like the year before.
Nobody does.
Poor old Al Gore.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think you'd have to go back to not. You have to go back to, I think, 30 years. You have to go back to 92. You have to go like a year before George Bush was riding pretty high.
Yeah.
So I'd say I think you have to go back that far. Wow. Okay, so my question to you then is: do these results, and you can throw in all the other results, all the other special election results this year. There've been so many of them. There've been positive to Democrats. There've been like 27 of them.
Yeah.
Do these results invalidate the polling or not?
They don't invalidate the polling, but I think they do add some qualifiers to the polling. So one of the things that these results suggest is that Democratic organisation in elections is strong.
Yep.
And that's definitely a turnaround over the last 10 years. During the Obama presidency, Democrats were basically a national popular vote winning machine who were losing everything else. So during the Obama presidency, Democrats lost 900 seats at federal and state level, which was one of the things that paved the way for Trump. Like the organizational infrastructure was there. The fact that Democrats are winning all of these races in all of these different parts of the country suggests that they've learned some lessons, and that even though they haven't been able to, rebuild the Democratic vote to what it once was in rural states, certainly at the national level, there's enough local organisation there that they're actually performing very strongly in these. I think that has to be one of the things that is reflected. Albeit this is not uniform across the country. Like, as we've said before, the Florida Democratic Party seems to be one of the most basket case organizations in the world. So it's not completely uniform, but it does suggest that if it comes down to ground game, the Democrats might have an actual advantage there. And I do think that one of the consequences of the complete Trumpian takeover of the Republican Party has actually been the hollowing out of a lot of its organizational ability, because a lot of the people who would have been the organizational backbone of the Republican Party in those years when they were winning everything, sure, some of them will have become really hardcore, enthusiastic Trumpers, but some of them will have just retired. Some of them will have just opted out. And a lot of the Trumpian organizational takeover has meant putting very, very inexperienced people into these locally powerful positions where they don't have the same experience of organizing, and where, because everything is built around Trump as personality cult, the organization is the Trump rally turning up. In 2016, there was more to it than that. In 2020, there wasn't. In 2020, it was all kind of completely built around Trump. So that I think one of the things that these elections is reflecting is an activist advantage for Democrats, which has got to be helpful. It might not be enough to win them an election, but it's got to be helpful in a presidential election.
That's a good point.
So that, I would say, is the most encouraging thing. For Democrats, certainly another source of encouragement that they really look at, obviously, is abortion. And I think it raises a very interesting question of how much abortion can be a factor in next year's election. This is clearly something Trump has thought about, because he has been distancing himself from his own actions as president. He campaigned on, I will be the president who'll get Roe versus Wade overturned. He still likes to take credit for that, but he says that these hardline bans on abortion are the reasons why Republicans keep losing, and what he wants is for everything to be returned to the states. Now, given how good Democrats are beginning to get at tying abortion into election campaigns, I don't know how much Trump's going to be able to distance himself from the abortion issue. I mean, I also don't know how much it is going to be an issue in a national election, given that in these state elections, you've got far more sort of concrete mechanisms, like who you elect in this really is going to have a major impact, or, what you vote for on this ballot measure really is going to have a major impact. Given Roe versus Wade already has been overturned, maybe that will neutralize the issue a little bit, although I think the Democrats are basically going to run on, there will be a national ban.
I think Democrats are definitely going to run on abortion. Yeah, I think that's pretty clear. And I was going to say, I think Trump's line. I'm not sure it's right to say Trump's line is states' rights. I think Trump's line is, I'm going to negotiate the best. Oh yes, of course. I'm going to negotiate the best thing ever, which is going to make everyone happy. Yeah, and don't ask me what it's going to be, but it's going to be great. Yeah, which I'm not sure that even his own supporters believe that anymore. But So
Yeah. So, Democrats are going to make this as much about abortion as possible. Trump's fortunate in the sense of he's basically won the primary race so early that he doesn't have to worry about getting outflanked from the right, which is what DeSantis and others are trying to do. He does not need to worry about that. Yep. He can try to take a consistently moderate line, although I don't know that he's going to have the same success painting himself as a moderate as he did in 2016. I suppose the third thing is, and I think what a lot of Democrats would want to take from this is voting and polling are different things.
Yep.
And voting is actually a lot more revelatory than polling is. People are not reliable when they report even how they have voted in the past, let alone how they're going to vote in the future or whether they're going to vote in the future. Democrats would say it is it's the election that actually reveals. However, some major caveats on that are that, over the last two presidential elections, polling significantly underestimates Republican strength when Trump is on the ballot.
Yes.
And it does seem to be that there are a lot of Republicans who don't come out when Trump is on the ballot, whereas these elections, Democrats seem to be treating it as if Trump is on, as if Trump is on the ballot. So that's an asymmetry which could make a general election a lot harder. And another reading on it is, this, as we talked about, the absolute sort of negative reading of these results is this just shows you what a drag Biden is. And if they've got no way of getting rid of Biden, then they are destined, to go down in ignominy, because this is what they could be doing if they didn't have, didn't have Biden, but instead, instead they're yoked to him. So, I don't know. I don't know how revealing these results. I mean, I think that in some sense they've got to give Democrats hope. Like, obviously, result is going to give them
better than a bad result.
Yes, yes. Yeah, no. If there'd actually been a bad result, then maybe there would have been a more serious. We've got to get Biden out. This could be another thing that helps. But as we've already said, really he's not going to go unless he chooses to go.
He's not going.
Yeah.
Okay, I got a few thoughts on this.
Yep.
First of all, as far as does this invalidate polling, the results themselves were totally consistent with the polling before the results.
Yes.
So
no,
the polling was vindicated in these races.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. Second thing, these results themselves have exit polls attached to them, which also show Biden stinking it up.
Yes.
In these actual results. Right? So Biden had a 39% approval rating.
Yes.
Amongst the Ohio exit poll guys.
Yeah.
Like it's not a good result.
No.
At the
and that's when that electorate was +2.
Yes.
Biden.
Yes.
So a +2 Biden electorate has 39% approval rating.
Oh, wait for it.
That's pretty bad.
This +2 Biden voting electorate, only 25% of them said Biden should run for re-election.
Wow.
Now, admittedly, 35% said the same for Trump.
Yes.
So that's not great either, but it's better than Biden. And they were a Biden +2 the voting pool, right? So that's the next thing. Yeah. Even these results themselves show Biden stinking it up, right? These results were also consistent with national results in the same polls that the same national polls that Biden is doing terribly in.
Yep.
Democrats are doing great.
Yes. Yeah.
Democrats in Congress are doing great.
Yes.
Democrat issues are doing great.
Yeah.
It's just Biden that is doing badly.
Yes.
He's the issue, right?
Yeah.
We may be entering a new dynamic here, which is something which I texted you about. Was my
I thought you were
first
going to say we
reaction.
may be entering a new dimension here.
Oh, just imagine.
Yeah.
A dimension where people are 85 when they run for election. Just imagine that dimension. This is my first reaction on Tuesday or Tuesday America, Wednesday here was I think the Democrats are becoming the Republicans. Like where what happened to the old Republicans is what the Democrats are doing now, which is I think they're becoming a low turnout party.
Right.
Like the Republicans used to clean up in the midterms.
Yes, yeah.
And the off year elections.
Yeah.
Because Republicans were appealed to older people and in particular to educated people.
Yes,
and they're the guys who turn out to vote.
Yes, yeah.
Right? And I think they're the guys that the Democrats are appealing to these days. Increasingly under Biden.
Yes.
And Trump is appealing more to the working class.
I
people.
would love to see polls on actually what people Biden's age and up think.
Well,
I bet that's a pro-Biden crowd.
Well, remember we're accruing quite a few polls now where seniors over 65 are supporting Biden.
Yes.
I know you're talking about 65. You're talking about
I'm talking about 80 plus. Now, it would have to be a specifically done poll because in any nationally representative poll, there won't be many 80 pluses in there. But that's the poll I want to see. Pew.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now I've got no idea if that's true, by the way, if the Democrats are becoming a primarily low turnout party. As in a primarily party for low turnout elections.
Yeah.
But if they are, then this doesn't help Biden in the presidential election at all, especially not against Trump, who creates high turnout elections. The New York Times Siena poll, which we started with, backs this up. Let me tell you why. Biden led by 2 points amongst previous primary voters in that poll.
Yep.
He led by 1 point amongst those who voted in the midterms. He trailed by double digits amongst everyone else.
Yeah.
So that indicates, suggests that may be part of what's happening.
Yes. Yeah.
Maybe. We don't know. We'll find out.
And there was some earlier analysis, I think, before this poll from the New York Times that said Biden's particular weakness is with Democrats who don't vote in midterm elections. Yes.
That's right.
Yeah.
And my other observation, we've already talked about a few times, that the Democrats might be about to become a culture war party. Which, because while they're stinking up in the economic polling, it would make sense.
Yes.
And there are pro-choice advocates in Florida, Arizona, Missouri, and South Dakota trying to get on the ballot for 2024.
Now, just on this turnout point, I have been wondering this week because I've been making the assumption that next year is going to be a very high turnout election because of the hate factor. As we've talked about before, the fact that both candidates are very unpopular doesn't decrease turnout. It drives it up because people are voting against rather than for. I do wonder, though, just looking at the kind of poll results that we're seeing now, whether this could actually be the year where people have had enough. Like, could this actually be a lower could a Trump-Biden election next year actually be a significantly lower turnout election than what we've seen previously? Will there just be too many people who are just
broken?
Yeah. I don't know.
I know.
Yeah. We'll have to see how I suspect if that, the election was somehow suddenly held tomorrow, then you would get a lower turnout election. But of course, that's not what happens. They happen after a year of campaigning build-up, which is going to drive people out. But
because we got a few things I want to get through before we wrap up, I'm not going to play the toilet break to you, Dave. I'll play it to people at home.
Yep.
Essentially, the toilet break is, I just think Pete Buttigieg is very, very good at swatting down bullshit.
Okay.
I don't know if he's ever going to be a great political candidate or not.
No.
But he's definitely going to be good at doing interviews if he's a political candidate. That much I know on cable TV.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just going to play you just some Mike Johnston related garbage. And just, I want you at home who if you're listening to this on the toilet, I want you just to think to yourself, could you write a better answer if you sat down and drafted it? Pete Buttigieg, off the top of his head, comes up with the best answers. Like, honestly, I think it would take me a very long time to write a better answer than this. And this is about something that's very personal to him, which is his homosexuality and the fact that Mike Johnston doesn't like it very much.
Yes, yep.
Anyway, this is the toilet break. See what you think.
We have a new Speaker of the House, Mike Johnston from Louisiana. In the K-File here at CNN, reported that back in the mid to late 2000s, he worked with a group that promoted conversion therapy. The idea that people who are gay can be turned not gay. And this is something that's been widely discredited and considered dangerous over time. And back then, he's quoted as saying, quote, homosexual behavior is something you do, it's not something that you are. And since he's been confirmed as speaker, just last week, he did an interview where he talked a little bit about this. I want you to listen to what he said.
When the Supreme Court issued the Obergefell opinion, that became the law of the land, okay? I respect the rule of law, but I also genuinely love all people, regardless of their lifestyle choices.
Regardless of their lifestyle choices, he said, which is very similar to what he said 15, 20 years ago when he was working with groups pressing conversion therapy. What do you make of that statement?
Look, I've often said if being gay was a choice, that was a choice that was made way above my pay grade. But my lifestyle is that I'm a dad. I'm a married father of two, a beautiful boy and girl, twins, 2 years old. And our family deserves to be protected. It deserves to be supported, just like every American family. Most Americans get that. Most Americans believe that. I will admit it's a little bit difficult driving the family minivan to drop our kids off at daycare, passing the dome of a Capitol, knowing that the Speaker of the House sitting under that dome doesn't even think our family ought to exist. But that's one of many, many reasons why I'm grateful to live under the protection of the Constitution, which, according to the Supreme Court, established our right to have that family, and serving under a president who is making sure that everybody is included and protected, including families like mine.
I'm sure you were very impressed, Dave.
I was very, very impressed.
Okay.
But if he does run for president again, they've got to lose the Midwestern dorkiness that characterized the last campaign.
Well,
the high hopes dance.
High hopes.
Oh, my God. No.
Yeah, they definitely need to lose the high hopes dance.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Lots of topics. You want to talk about Joe Manchin?
Yes. So it was announced today. Joe Manchin is not running for re-election,
which just makes sense. He wasn't going to win.
Yeah. No, and he's 76 years old.
Yeah.
He is going to go on a tour now to determine whether he's a viable candidate for No Labels.
Of course, he's going to run for No Labels.
Yeah. So I mean, No Labels is still keeping its powder dry, but anyway, that makes it very unlikely that Democrats are going to hold on to the Senate next year. And it was already unlikely because they had to defend, as it is, West Virginia, Montana, and Ohio. I think they're going to lose all of them, actually. Even though, Sherrod Brown and John Tester are popular people. Just, I think that with Trump on the ballot, the way that those states are going to go is, and so, I think it's incredibly unlikely that a Democrat could replicate what Manchin has done.
Oh, yeah. Zero chance.
That was, Manchin had a very long relationship of trust with West Virginia. And delivery of, delivering the goods, which is very important.
West Virginia is arguably the reddest state.
Yeah. So I don't think that Manchin is going to be replaced by anybody who can win. And in terms of prospects for Democratic pickups, they're talking about places like Florida and Texas. So, sure, it is Ted Cruz, but, Ted Cruz has shown a lot of resilience in the past, as noxious as he is. So, so that brings us to the scenario of, the only prediction I'd be confident making next year is Republicans winning the Senate. I would, however, lean towards Democrats winning the House. I think they're going to get quite a lot of those seats back in New York. And, I don't make that with anywhere near the level of confidence that I would make for Republicans getting the Senate. But once again, when it comes back to that kind of local turnout machine stuff, I think that gives them an advantage in the House.
Well, it's funny you say that because Sean is. Let's do question time right now. Sean says, Hey, Chaz, today, November 5, is exactly 1 year until the 2024 US presidential election. How about you and Dave make some predictions for the outcome? Peppers on YouTube/Facebook could also put their predictions in writing in the comments. Could be embarrassing all round in 12 months' time.
Could be.
So in the spirit of embarrassing ourselves, and of course, let's just be very clear here.
Yeah.
You obviously cannot make predictions a year out.
Yes, yeah.
A million things can happen that make this completely pointless.
Yeah.
But in the spirit of just embarrassing yourself just for fun, and we all acknowledge these aren't real predictions. Is us screwing around. Are you okay? You've already said Senate.
Yeah, because that's a structural thing.
Yeah,
right. That is the number of Senate seats being defended is always a hugely important factor in Senate elections. The House, as I say, I'm not so confident in.
But but for the purpose of this, you're leaning Democrat.
Yeah,
at this point in time, are you willing to even postulate a silly guess for president?
No, because there are not only are there so many variables involved. There are so many historically unprecedented historically unprecedented variables involved. Candidate age. One of the candidates facing criminal trials.
Yeah.
Incredibly low approval ratings for both candidates. Weird wars going on,
completely unknown third parties on ballots. For instance.
Completely unknown third parties on ballots. Very unpredictable economic situation.
Yeah.
There are just too many variables for me to make a prediction.
That's okay. I'm going to go for it because just in the spirit.
Yeah.
Just let me emphasize in the spirit of the question. I totally agree with you on the Senate.
Yep.
There's no doubt in my mind that the Republicans are going to take the Senate.
Yep.
I agree with you on the House that I am leaning towards the Democrats winning the House, but I'm a lot less certain of that.
Yes, which, by the way, that would be a very historically weird situation for both houses to change hands to different parties in the same year. I don't know when the last time was that happened, but it's a while ago. Yeah.
And I'm going to go out in the limb. I'm going to say I think Biden's going to win the presidency.
All right.
And the reason I'm going to say that, and I have zero confidence in that. Zero. Let's be very clear. Zero confidence.
Yes.
But the reason why I am saying that is because in my position to take a wild guess at this point in time, I think the biggest factor is the one I mentioned earlier, which is the attention factor.
Yeah.
I think that we're about to see Trump be all in our face for 12 months. And I think it's really going to give people the shits.
Yes.
And I think especially he's at his most obnoxious when he's under pressure in a trial-like situation.
Yeah.
And I think that he's going to really like the constant cries of rigged election and political prosecution. It's just going to really annoy people.
Yes.
He's already openly talking about the revenge he's going to have on people. He's going to get more like that as time goes on.
Yeah.
He's never going to shove back the 2020 election.
No.
The entire time. And he's going to really give people the shits on that.
Yeah.
And so I think for that reason, I think people are just going to get sick of the guy.
Yeah.
And so I think that while Biden would not beat anyone else, I think he will just beat Trump.
Okay.
For the purposes of this, but zero confidence, Sean. Anyway, so there's that. Do you have anything else to say about Manchin?
No, not really. I think we've already said a lot about Manchin on this podcast.
We have. And the no labels, we just don't know until they actually do it. When they do it, if they do it, they're going to get on the ballots because they've got so much money behind them. They have tens of millions of dollars.
Yes.
So they're going to get on
Crow is one of their donors.
Yeah. So they'll get on the ballot and they're going to get attention because they're going to have a Republican and a Democrat on the same ticket. So they'll get attention and they're going to be annoying. Yeah, anyway, so there's that.
Yeah.
The next thing you had you were going to follow up on the UAW from last week. You want to talk about that? Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So the UAW had a pretty big win as a result of their strike. They didn't get everything that they wanted, but they got a lot of what they.
This is the auto workers.
Yeah. In terms of pay increases, in terms of the abolition of the tier system of payment.
Yep.
In terms of actually winning the right to picket plant closures,
Yep.
which was a pretty significant thing. And
that's new. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And that is that is tied in general to a sort of better package for dealing with with plant closures.
Can I just say why that's really important? The reason why that's so important is because the thing which they fear at the moment, more than anything, is the transition to new factories, right?
Yeah.
Those new factories have to open, right?
Yeah.
But when those factories open, other factories will be closing.
Yes.
If they can protest the other factories closing, they're not protesting those factories to keep those factories open. They're protesting those factories to give themselves better conditions in the new factories.
Yes, absolutely.
And so that's their leverage over these companies to not screw them over in a couple of years' time.
That's right. Yes, yeah. And so, today UAW was there with Biden reopening the Stellantis plant in northern Illinois.
Excellent.
So one of the things that's been talked about a lot, which deserves a lot of attention, was the UAW strategy in this, which was going after all the big three at once.
Yep.
And that meant that they were able to manage these strikes where was about 10% of the workforce would be on strike at any given time, and it would happen at different places. And certainly this is a lot more effective than what has been up until this point the typical bargaining picture, which is going manufacturer by manufacturer, in many cases plant by plant. And the thing is, though, this is how it used to be done. This is not a completely new thing. When the UAW was at the height of its power, it was always dealing with the whole big three at once in Michigan. That was how they managed to get, such high living standards. So this is actually a reversion to older union tactics, and they're working. This is happening at a time when Americans are probably more favourably disposed to unions than they have been in the recent past. Certainly more favourably disposed to the idea of workers and the working class. You've got more and more Americans actually identifying as working class. I think this is partly because of a Republican shift towards working class identification. Things are looking more hopeful for unions than they've looked for a while. And even just a few years ago, unions were having really serious setbacks, especially in terms of plant workers in the South consistently voting against unionization. But we haven't. It's not just the UAW. The Writers Guild reached a very favourable agreement. The SAG-AFTRA has actually also, so that's the actors, have also, Screen Actors Guild, they've also just reached a very favourable agreement. The LA hotel workers, I'm not sure what's going on with them, but you just look at those different sectors. You've got manufacturing, you've got Hollywood, and then you've got the service industries, all having these pretty debilitating strikes going on at once, all happening with a president who has a distinct preference for industrial peace, right? Who has actually sent envoys to negotiate new bargains that have staved off strikes in the past, but this has shown that if they they're not just going to fall into line behind Biden. Sean Fain from the UAW, he probably will give Biden his endorsement ultimately, but Biden has had to earn it. So this is certainly I think this is a promising era for unions at the moment.
Why do you think? I have no explanation for this. Why do you think? Like you mentioned before, these are two debilitating strikes.
Yeah.
They're certainly intractable for a while.
Yeah.
And they involved a lot of people, and they were potentially massive strikes. But and certainly in terms of numbers, the most we've had for more than 2 decades.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, it never felt like a crisis.
No,
to me. Why do you think that's the case? I mean, I've lived through smaller strikes than that. That were treated like the world was ending.
Yeah.
Is that just Biden, or is that because Biden was pretty calm about it all?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. Yes, yeah. The way that Biden managed it, the way that the unions themselves managed it. I think. And I think just public opinion, as I say, public opinion in general is not just as anti-union and anti-strike as it used to be in the US. I mean, the other thing is that this is happening at a time when the economy is still expanding at a pretty rapid clip. And what these strikes were about, ultimately, in most cases, was cost of living issues, which are the issues that arise when you've got a rapidly expanding economy. You've also got inflation, and you've got pay that is stuck back in a previous stage of economic development. So when the economy is going well, strikes aren't as they're debilitating to the employers, but they're not as debilitating to the to the country as a whole.
Okay.
Yeah.
The only other thing I'd add to this is that, I mean, I don't know if you guys at home, if you peppers have seen some numbers bandying around. There's some pretty big numbers when they were talking about the pay, they were getting 27% pay rises by 2027 plus cost of living adjustments, which adds another, say, 6% over the term of the contract. So you're talking 33% increase in pay. And people might look at that and go, "Oh my God, that's just going to cut the car companies aren't going to be able to afford that. That's going to send them bankrupt, right?" No,
absolutely not.
I mean, for number one, the car company wouldn't agree to it if it was going to. But number two, you underestimate A, how much inflation has happened recently.
Yes, yeah.
And B, how long it's been since they had a cost of living increase.
Yes, yeah.
The first year goes up 11%, and that in itself does not take into consideration inflation just from the past 3 years.
Yes, yeah.
So that 33%, the first 16, 17% of that is just taking care of the recent inflation spike.
Yes.
And it's been the best part of 15 years since they had a pay rise.
Yeah.
So that is, so in actual fact, the 33% barely gets them even to where they were at the last recession.
Yeah. And I think ever since, the other factor in this is the post-GFC world.
Yeah.
Before the GFC, the argument that maximizing corporate profit was absolutely necessary for everyone, including workers, I think had a lot more traction. People just don't buy into it anymore. And the fact that publicly listed companies are essentially required to gloat to their shareholders about how much money they've been making from conditions of misery is something that really means people just, including unions, just never buy the excuse now that they can't afford it. Yeah.
Do you have anything to say about the Rashida Tlaib censure? Because we only have 5 minutes, and so that's
well. This is after last week where I said, well, it seems that everyone's decided that these censure motions are a bad idea. But no, she has actually been censured, and 22 Democrats joined in.
They did. They did. And what she was censured for those wondering, was there are a few censure motions. One was from Marjorie Taylor Greene again. She got rid of the bit where she said there was an insurrection from that protest. Instead, she still mentioned it, but she didn't call it insurrection.
Yep.
And there was also Max Miller, the guy who said we're going to turn Palestine into a parking lot. He was offended by Rashida Tlaib's language. They seem to all be very worried. The guy who ended up, there's Rich McCormack, who they actually end up using his motion.
Yes.
He said she promoted false narratives regarding the October 7th attack and called for the destruction of the state of Israel, he says. He says she defended the brutal rapes, murders and beheadings and kidnappings, including of Americans, by Hamas as justified resistance to the apartheid state. He said she spread false narratives about Israel intentionally bombing that hospital. After the U.S. intelligence said otherwise. He said that she partly blamed America for the deaths of Palestinians when the Iron Dome actually saved lives. That's what America's contribution was. And he pinged her saying "from the river to the sea," which seems to be a big deal to everyone. So what were your thoughts?
So there's been a lot of talk about the river to the sea line because certainly there are definitely groups who have used it in a pretty genocidal sense.
It's in Hamas's constitution.
Yeah, it's in Hamas's. Yeah, it's in the 1988
Yeah.
constitution, not the 2017 amended ones. There have been others. I mean, and Tlaib said rather clumsily, I thought, like, no, this is an aspirational. This is about everyone living together in justice. There actually have been plenty of Palestinians who have sort of developed this new meaning of it.
It's an aspirational call for freedom, human rights, and peaceful coexistence, not death, destruction, or hate.
Yes. Yeah. There is a version of that. But it's when you're using language like that, it's certainly very easy to point to the people who have used it in the drive Israel into the sea argument, and I think that. Like, she would have known that was coming.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you make that, people aren't going to read the aspirational. But, I've read plenty of people making this argument in very reasonable terms, saying that, no, the Palestinians being free from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, that doesn't preclude Jews being free in the same land.
Yes. You could have a one-state solution.
Yeah. Like, we want an end to, or even a two-state solution that doesn't involve, military occupation or doesn't involve sort of constant state of siege or blockade or whatever. There are ways of making this into this kind of aspirational slogan that she was talking about. But it's also very understandable, given the way that some other really bad actors use it, that, she would have known that was coming.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say on that similar kind of thing. I was going to say when you see Hamas chanting it while firing guns in the air on October 7, they're not very friendly, right? No. They mean it in a genocidal way, yes.
Yeah.
When you see American students chanting it, I don't think they mean let's kill all the Jews.
No.
Like in the context in which it's used, you should use your brain. Having said that, Rashida Tlaib would know better than anyone that how it's used in the Middle East, and that there will be people who will be offended by that. And she's meant to be this lefty. And the lefties are worried about offending people. Like, just like people will get offended. Yes. Like, she would know that. So what I would say is that this is a, like, I think it's unfair to say, oh yeah, when she says that, she means genocide.
No.
But at the same time, I think it is fair to say she's been insensitive.
Yes.
Like, and she's been knowingly insensitive.
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't censure someone for that.
No.
But I would say that's a poor performance from her. That's what I would say.
Yeah. And I mean, that's reflected in Democrats actually voting to censure. And that's a rare crack in Democratic Party unity in the House.
And there were lots who didn't censure her who said, I think this is shit.
Yes. Yeah.
But I'm not going to censure her, which is kind of what my position is.
Yeah.
Like, and the hospital thing as well. Ilhan Omar, like the issue with her with the hospital, lots of people thought that the hospital was bombed by Israel early on. Like, we've talked about this at length.
New York Times actually had it.
Totally.
On its front page.
No problems at all with that. Right? Okay. Lots of people did. But Ilhan Omar, when more information came out afterwards, she said, okay.
Yeah.
She said, we now know better. Let's move on.
Yeah.
Like whereas Rashida Tlaib didn't.
Yes.
She went to protest and kept on spreading it.
Yeah.
So once again, that's her freedom of speech if she wants to.
Yeah.
But I just think it's a bit shit.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of just my view of her, that she's just a bit shit. But I wouldn't be censuring her.
No.
And I wouldn't necessarily be voting for her.
Yes.
But but at the same time as well, she's the only Palestinian voice in the House.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think that doesn't give her carte blanche to say whatever the fuck she wants.
No.
But I do think that people should be at least considering what she is saying and why she is saying it.
Yes, yeah.
Because for diversity of views.
Yes, yeah.
Anyway, time for us to go, hey?
Yes, you can read about the history of the Institute building at the Deaf History Association of New South Wales website.
It's not a book, okay.
No, it's not a book.
Okay.
But yeah, you can read about the history of this very unique and very beautiful building. By the way, I should point out, like, it's got proper lightning rods and stuff in place so that we're not getting, we're not getting physically hit by lightning, but it is the tallest thing around.
Well, for those who are watching this podcast rather than listening to it, I think I did find it interesting that Dave was talking about how many times he gets electrocuted when you look at his hair. But anyway, one thing I'll read out from correspondence from Jean. Hi, Chas and Days. Love your work. Just wanted to clarify one bit of information in your largely well-balanced and nuanced approach to the Israel-Hamas conflict. Thank you. Re-Palestinian refugees in Jordan. The reason Jordan has such a high number of refugees is because Jordan was actually part of Mandate Palestine. The British installed the Hashemites as the monarchy and drew the border at the Jordan River. On top of that, what never gets mentioned in the context of Palestinian displacement in 1948 is the ethnic cleansing of ancient Jewish communities in Arab countries such as Yemen, Tunisia, Morocco, Iraq, Lebanon and Egypt, where my father's family lived until 1948. There's also the mass exodus of the Ethiopian community. This doesn't negate the suffering of the Palestinians, but the blame for their situation does not lie entirely with Israel.
No, absolutely. Yes. Yeah, no, a lot of the blame has always lain with the Arab states as well.
Needless to say, the situation is distressing and heartbreaking. Hopefully new leadership in both sides will take the brave steps required to reset everything and create the conditions for the only viable option, 2 states of 2 people. Just want to share because I thought it was a great comment.
Totally agree.
All right. I am hopefully got Bill Wyman in the middle of next week sometime, so we can talk Beatles because I've got a lot to ask him about after you talked so lovingly about his list last week. And Dave will be back next Friday, and we will see you guys then. Stay peppy.